a very good afternoon and welcome to the last day of the regional webinar series, Media Matters, Dispelling Disinformation about Migrants and Refugees, organized by the Institute for Broadcasting Development, AIBD, the International Organization for Migration, the United Nations Migration Agency, IOM, and the World Health Organization, and funded by the European Union Civil Protection and Humanitarian Aid. Now, the aim of this training is to enlighten media and communications professionals to play a critical role in shaping public perceptions of migrants, refugees, and vulnerable populations by providing accurate information, stigma-free language, and ethical reporting with an inclusive approach in addressing disinformation and xenophobia. I'm Malarvili Meganathan. I'm the Media and Communications Consultant and Trainer for IOM Malaysia. Now, before we start our session today, I know we are all very excited, but please allow me to recap the highlights of our regional webinar series. Now, we started day one of the series on 9th March with two informative presentations. In session one, Shaping the Narrative, Media Migration and Public Perception by IOM, we got an overview of key statistics of global migration, objectives of well-managed migration, followed by what are the current public sentiments on the ground and some pressing socioeconomic challenges faced by migrants and refugees. And at the end of the presentation, we also included some key recommendations, especially for media practitioners, on the importance of using accurate terminologies, fundamentals of ethical reporting, stigma-free language, and ways to amplify voices of migrants. And in the second session on 9th March, Faiza Tanggol, a risk communication and community engagement consultant for the World Health Organization, highlighted the importance of direct community engagement in the decision-making process. And she also explained how media can help identify important issues to the community members and promote accountability. Now, let's have a look at our training highlights on 16th March, which was the second week of the training. We started the day with an excellent session from Adrian Pereira, Executive Director of North-South Initiative Malaysia. Now, he shared with us a number of news articles and headlines published by different media organizations in Malaysia. And he further explained why narratives must be rights-based, focus on realities on the ground, and especially the truth. In the second session on 19th March, Milicia Pisic, the Executive Director of Media Diversity Institute, which is based in London, she shared with us the New Neighbours initiative. Now, this initiative promotes inclusion and highlights the socioeconomic contribution of migrants and refugees in Europe. And today, on our last day of the regional webinar series, we are very pleased to have three esteemed panelists who are experts in their field to share with us their input on the discussion topic today, Forging Forward, Solution-Driven Media Reporting on Migration and Refugees. Now, after their presentations, we want to hear from you. We want your comments, experiences, and most importantly, questions. So please drop your questions in the chat box, and later on, I'll direct the questions to the speakers. So let's kickstart today's test session on Forging Forward, Solution-Driven Media Reporting on Migration and Refugees. Please welcome Ajibola Abayomi. He is the current Managing Director and CEO of the Lead Publications, based in Lagos, Nigeria. An experienced journalist, he has worked at various publications, including the Business Week, National Mirror, and the Society Post magazine. Ajibola is also the founder and the president of Journalists International Forum for Migration, JIFOM, a non-profit organization leading the advocacy efforts against human trafficking, crises leading to internal displacement and modern slavery. We are very pleased to have you with us today. Ajibola, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I say good afternoon because it's afternoon in Malaysia and morning here in Nigeria. And I thank you for the introduction. Consider it a great privilege for me to come around and make my input as far as this great deliberation is concerned. Yes, the issue and the focus is we are talking about how media can actually dispel disinformation about migrant and refugee. Let me first of all start by going direct and talk to we who are the professionals. Can we please go to the first page, the second page of the slide? Hello, please go to the second page of the slide.
Yeah, it's on the.
It's on.
Yeah. The second page is on. Yes, I want to start from a practical angle, which we should all key into as a media practitioner. The secretary, no, please, the second slide. I want to quote from a quotation from the Secretary General of the United Nations. He said, "Flood internet with fact and science while countering the growth of the cause of misinformation that is putting even more lives in danger." End of quote. I think that's a quote. What I'm trying to say here is that the media or print media or online media, the battle of journalism now is on social media. Media knowledge is on display. So we have a responsibility to put in those facts and figure on the internet, because social media now spread messages faster even than the traditional media. Let me go to the second slide, please. Hello? Let's go to the, yeah. So, and in doing so, we must also, as journalists, understand the real context and even the meaning of this disinformation. What is it to us, and what is it to the group of migrant or migration as the content that we are covering? You see, information is information that is false and deliberately put on. Okay. So we talk about disinformation as information that is false and deliberately created to harm a person, social group, or organization or country. Misinformation, information that is false but not created with an intention of causing harm. Then we also talk about malinformation. What is malinformation? That is based on reality, used to inflict harm on person or social group. So for a media and media practitioner, for us to be able to actually deal with this information, we must understand all the concepts. And one thing I want to recommend here is the United Nations Verified campaign, which deals with which is strictly about how we can actually control fake information. So can we go to the next slide? So for us as a media, it is also important for us to understand what migration and refugees matters are all about. Globally, we have about 272 million international migrants now, according to the International Organization for Migration, which equates. I was saying that for media to effectively understand the danger of misinformation, we must actually understand what this migration and refugee matter is all about. I was saying that currently now, for us to know the harm this information can do to a large number of people called migrants. As of today, according to the International Organization for Migration, we have 272 million international migrants across the world, and this equates about 3% of the world population. You can imagine this group of people. We continue to put in false information. You can see the number of people that are going to be affected, including their family, because anywhere in the world, as far migrants are breaking down in Africa, for now, as of 2015, we have about 19 million people that are moving within Africa. We're talking of India, because when we talk about migration here to an average African, they're looking at it from the angle of people moving to Europe, people moving to America. But I'm talking of even migration within the African countries. So for us, what I'm saying is that we need to be careful. We need to ensure that we put the right information. Media must be involved in ensuring that the right information is put on table. Then we must also ensure that we talk about migration from positive perspective. Because oftentimes, when people talk about migration, they start from the horrible angle. What do I mean by the horrible angle? When you see media, particularly in the broadcast media and television, when they want to talk about migration, what I've seen majorly in Africa, they start from people crossing the Mediterranean Sea. So there is this negative impact, there is this negative image that is already built in the mind of those who are looking at migration. Oh, these are the people going through the Mediterranean Sea. But far from that, migration is also positive. If you look at the level of remittance, particularly in 2019, you can see that the level of remittance from the migrants from different countries, either to the high-income countries or the low-income country, was very high. We talk about, for instance, in 2019, before the COVID pandemic, we have top 5 countries in the world. India has about 83.1 billion, China 68.4 billion, Mexico has 35.5 billion, and on like that. That's to tell you that migration itself is positive. We should concentrate more on the positive side. Please, can we go to the next slide? The next page. Okay, so from here you can see the table of migration flow and how it has positively impacted on the economy. Next slide, please. Now, most of the things that are causing this disinformation too is for the media. An average journalist who is not into migration reporting hardly know the difference between a refugee and somebody who is seeking an asylum, or somebody who is just a migrant. By mere misusing of words like illegal migrant, we have put everybody in danger. So for us, it is important for us to know the difference between this term, migrant, refugee, which cannot be used interchangeably. Refugees are people who are outside their own country because of threat to life or freedom. They are defined and protected by a specific international legal framework. So all these journalists must understand for us to properly situate the information that concerns them. Can we go to the next slide quickly, please? Next slide. So as of today, we have about 79.5 million people who are around the world that have been forced to flee their homes. And in ensuring that we actually report these people, we must understand their plight. We must know where they're coming from. We must understand that by projecting them in bad image, we are causing a lot of harm to humanity. Please, let's go ahead to the next slide. Next slide, please. Now, what are the strategies that media can put in place for us to combat misinformation about migrant and refugee, particularly during pandemic? I want to here recommend the media ethics that was signed on to in 2019. In 2019 in Tunisia, Dispelling was part of it. It was facilitated by the United Nations. Please go to the next slide so that I can explain quickly. Now, media, number one, media must ensure that we report fast. The work of journalists consists of reporting on particular story in a global, historical, or socio-economic, cultural, and geopolitical. What I'm actually saying here is that we must be concerned about fact. Then again, for us to properly report well so that we don't give misinformation, we must always seek the consent of migrants, understand that we must always respect their person. Media must always be the voice of the voiceless. Please, go ahead. Can you scroll up, please? Can you scroll up? Hello, can we scroll up? Yeah. we must have empathy, and we must also be vigilant. For the fact that we are covering migration or migrant-related issue, we must know that we are dealing with human beings. Humanity should be at the center piece of our practice. That is the only way we can free these people. That is the only way we can report them factually. We must seek their consent. They must be respected. And we must also be gender sensitive. Issues that concern women must be handled with utmost care and priority in such a way that we did not expose them unnecessarily, but actually bring to fore their plight. Please go to the next slide. Then for those of us who are in the broadcast media, and those of us who are even in the print media, photojournalists, we must ensure that we use the right image to illustrate the situation. We must give cover to the minors. Minors must not be unnecessarily exposed. Still, images are provided to the newsroom, specifically captioned to help prevent misunderstanding, misuse, or malicious use. What I'm trying to say here is that the editors, the journalists, those of us in the newsroom, we have a duty, because whatever we put into the public glare is likely to have a large impact on this migrant. So we must be careful the kind of photographs we use and the context. Please go ahead. Next slide, please. Then I talk about what I started with, that for us to effectively counter this misinformation, I want media all over the world for us to key into the United Nations Verify campaign. How does it work? It's simply what we journalists and professionals are used to. We must be able to analyze every story with 5 Ws and H, which is already on our fingertips. What are these 5 Ws and H? We are talking of who, we are talking of what, we are talking of when, where, and why. That is the only way we can actually analyze before we present our stories. There are a lot of stories that are running around the internet. For us to be able to amplify such story, which can be the lead for us to a bigger story about migrant and refugee, we must know, who is this story talking about? What is the content of the story? When was the story generated, and from where and why? We must understand why a story should go and why a story should not go. So in doing all this will guide our contribution to ensure that migrants are properly reflected. Now, what is even this verified United Nations campaign that we are talking about? It is an initiative to encourage us all to check and advise properly before we share story. So I want to advise that at this stage that we must key into it. Let me also say this. You can see that even during the pandemic, a lot of stories are being bandied around. Before I went on break, I was actually saying that as media practitioners, we must sign on to become information volunteers. For us to share accurate information, for us to share information that will bring about respect for dignity and persons of migrant and even refugee. Now, what is the way forward in all of this? We will not win, we will not win the communication war with press releases and fact sheets. This is a digital battlefield, and we need to communicate with compelling and sophisticated new methods, which is why I said the other time, we must go beyond the traditional way of reporting news. That, okay, it is aired on a television station, it is aired on radio station. We must wake up to the reality of our time, that the impact of social media is very large. So we must devise a means which we spread accurate information on social media, on the internet. Just as information spread and metascales person to person, so too the institution need to do more than just issue pronouncement and fact. Empower every day people to spread factual, trusted information with their friends, family, and social media network. I am also saying here that we must, as media professionals, realize that we are living in a different times. We must not restrict ourselves to the stratification of our office. Oh, once I do my story, once I'm accompanied with my camera, once I heard it on television, it all ends there. We must take a step that whatever we produce is also put there in the public layer through the internet, where people can actually see the accurate information. So this seminar should be part of the digital first responders and information volunteer earlier mentioned, should largely be migration journalists. So what I'm trying to explain here is that this seminar, the take home from here is that we media practitioners should volunteer to be information carrier, should volunteer to spread actual information, fact and figure about migration, about refugee. The network of journalists should set up a migration information observatory. The world can only contain every person have access to million international migrants that are spread across the world. These are economic developers. These are people who ensure that economic of the nation develops. Again, for us to actually be able to put this issue in the right perspective, we must understand what these migrants are going to in different parts of the world. For instance, in the Middle East, where they operate the kafala system, which has put a lot of migrants in slavery, perpetual slavery. I understand that recently, a few days ago, Saudi Arabia just abolished kafala. As media, when I say as media, I'm talking of the whole of us now as media practitioners, irrespective of the medium we report. We must understand the plight of these people. For instance, a lot of stories that have been coming up from the Middle East portray migrants as a group of people who do next to nothing but to come and inflict pains on the employers. That's not true. That's not true. We must balance the story. Whatever the immigration police is saying, we must actually investigate, because oftentimes we take our source of story from the authorities without actually going back to report the other side of the story. So for us to effectively report this, we must know the real situation. We must be well abreast with facts. So I was saying that, are we even aware of the kafala system? Even in the Asia out there, the rights of migrants are being abused. Many of them are not paid their wages. Are we part of a system to chorus justice so that it can be justice for all, justice for employer, justice for the migrant? So for us to effectively win this battle of containing this information, we must actually be thorough. We must actually be well abreast with fact. We must be objective. We must report this story from objective point of view. Hear the story from both sides and balance it. So let's go to the next slide, please. But I understand I have some few minutes so that I can quickly wrap up. So, in one word, before I actually hand over to Madam Moderator, what my presentation is all about here now is for us as media practitioners to face the reality of our time. And the reality of our time, these concepts are embedded in what we have passed through as journalists. It is high time we uphold facts. We need to be objective, and we need to move away from the primordial sentiment of our respective countries. I've chatted with a lot of journalists across the world, and what I've been encouraging their members, because DIFOM has, as of now, DIFOM has over 300 members spread across the world, that when you want to report your story, yes, we talk about credibility, we talk about source, we talk about giving voice to the authorities. We are quick to cite responses or positions of agencies of government authority, immigration police, when it has to do with migrant matters. And let me, with due respect, most times these positions are not correct. They spread disinformation. They spread disinformation and give negative report about the migrant. So what I'm saying here is that we must go beyond the mere fact of trying to put government position always in the lead in our story. We must investigate. We must ensure that we get the right information. migrants and with the CSOs that work with a non-governmental organization. I actually know that the media is a challenge. For us, that is why Journalists International Forum for Migration in March here in Ghana, when we did the African Migration Summit, we put up a publication on understanding the migration concept, a guide to the language of reporting. Our colleagues are guilty of not using the right terminologies, of not using the right words to describe migrant situation. I want to strictly, at this point, talk about the use of the word illegal. It's very common. Majority of the media, except those who understand this concept, when they want to report illegal, by the time you describe a human being as being dealing with illegality or is illegal, you are giving the security of operatives and the operators of government the propensity to deal with the situation as if the person involved is a criminal. So we must ensure that we are well abreast with the right terminologies to describe migrants, refugees, and their situation. That is the only way we can actually contribute. So the war against misinformation, malinformation, and all that can be won critically if media look deep into who we are as conveyors of fair, truth, and factual information. So for us, we will do well by actually revisiting some of these things, by ensuring that we imbibe really ethical journalism, responsible journalism with human face, having a feeling for the migrant mostly, because they are the vulnerable group. Migrants anywhere in the world, they are in the vulnerable group in that they are on foreign lands, and we must ensure that we protect their rights. But that is not to say that if we have anybody that is into criminality, that he or she must not be punished. Whoever is into criminality, whoever is doing anything that is totally illegal, that is not within the confines of the law, taken up by law. So, but what we are saying here is that oftentimes, the kind of stories we read about migrants, for instance, in Africa here, all over the world, I'm sure you remember what happened in South Africa, xenophobic attack. It was fueled by the media in that country, who put into the psyche of the people and the government that migrants have come to take over the jobs in South Africa, and which is not true. You see a lot of Africans, a lot of other nationalities being brutalized just because we did not manage the information properly. Till date, there are still migrants in South Africa. Are they taking over the jobs? Even in Ghana here, I could see at a point, they were close to labeling every Nigerians and every other nationality living in Ghana as criminal. If one person has committed a crime, like I said, it must be isolated and taken up by the law, by the legal process. So it is not for us to go into what I call hasty generalization. So we must ensure that whatever we are reporting actually is dominated by humanity, actually in such a way that we don't inflict harm on our fellow human beings. Xenophobic is not good for anybody. For instance, permit me to say here that I am an African. This is what I say to the South African authority, that if in Africa here, brothers are killing brothers, sisters are killing sisters, just because of misinformation, what right have we to go to the other part of the world, to protest against racism? We must ensure that we combat it. So at this point, hello.
Yes.
Let me thank you for the opportunity.
It'd be great if you could wrap up.
Let me thank you. Yes, I'm wrapping up now. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to thank you for the opportunity to contribute. Let me also thank Madam Ogo of Voice of Nigeria, who actually linked me up with AIBD for me to be privileged to participate in this seminar. At the level of GIFO, we look forward to more relationship with IBD and other organizations. Our prayer is that the pandemic will allow more room to operate so that we can converge and have physical conferences anytime from next year and anytime that the situation is safer that we can do. It is a privilege to be here. Let me also thank you on behalf of Journalists International Forum for Migration all over the world. Our members are appreciative of this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajibola, for the insightful presentation and for highlighting some key strategies for all of us media professionals to apply in our reporting, and also reminding all of us that we need to wake up to the realities on what's happening in terms of transformation of media in general. Now, next, I would like to invite Maria Leonida. She's a documentary film director, co-founder and head of programs at CARPOS, Center for Education and Intercultural Communication, a non-profit organization running Greek and European media and film literacy projects. Her documentary work has been screened in film festivals and TV channels across Europe with various subjects on arts and society. Maria trained in filmmaking in London and Denmark, holds a BA in history and Masters in Art History. We are very excited to have you with us today. Over to you, Maria.
Good morning, everybody from Athens, Greece. So we are having a very interesting mix of people here. I'm very grateful for this invitation. It's a very interesting session for me. I will be talking, let me share my screen then. Yes, Mala? Okay. So I will be talking from the point of view of a filmmaker and a media education expert, which means that I am doing also grassroots work and connecting with people during their the phase of adjusting into the new country. Is this sharing working fine?
Perfect.
Is this okay? Okay, so thank you. So my point of view is not that of a journalist, but rather of a documentary filmmaker. And I will focus on this way of approaching the stories that people have been describing. Probably the people in the audience that followed the second session that Milica Pesic presented, in case you have followed that, she approached the theme of documentary through an EBU series. I will be connecting to this. And the reason is because one of my works has been recently producing a short film inside a refugee camp near Athens. As you know, Greece has been a country that received quite big numbers in relation to our position and to our number of population. So it has been a major issue since 2015 for us, for the last 4, 5, 6 years, and it's going on. My work in the refugee camps has been focusing in also in and outside the camps in doing photography and video lessons. This arts practice, of course, is considered one of the activities to create inclusive processes. And this is the reason why we often, and why NGOs are interested in employing people like us to organize and disseminate artistic practices in these communities, because they are very collaborative processes, because they have a strong expressive value. So these learning sessions that have been quite in demand, one of them is the one that happened in the camp of Sisto. It's not more than half an hour from the center, maybe 40 minutes from Athens, so very central in a way, but at the same time very dislocated, as most of the camps, as you can imagine. So during this photographic workshop, which lasted 3 months, and I was encountering a group of young refugees from, let's say, 13 to 22 years old, so quite a big gap. I felt the need that it was not only the learning process that was happening that was valued, but it was important also to document the process and document the results and the impact of this workshop. So I decided to make a documentary about it, and it was one of the challenges I am very fond of creating what I call the one-day documentary in the format of short film, which is more user-friendly and more possible to produce, to fund, to edit, and also to disseminate as a tool for
Assalamu
exactly in
alaikum. Why you
relation
have
to
left the meeting?
So short film, I believe, is a very excellent tool to approach the audiences and to express and motivate people towards a special cause. And for your conference, the theme, which is bothering so many countries, how to dispel misinformation, I think that short filmmaking is very crucial. Of course, I would like to make a small difference around what is usually received as a reportage media piece to a short documentary. I think that what you are talking also as journalists about investigation, careful research is what we are really talking about here. And in documentary, maybe a strong difference is that we are investing time into come into contact with the people, with the protagonists, with the location, with the environment. In documentary, we are interested in the delicate nuances, the delicate layers of everyday life that shape the stories of people. So this is a screenshot from my film Portrait Day, as I called it. And we will have a short extract. We will see the first 3 minutes and then another 2 minutes. And of course, I will share in the chat later the link. You can watch it at your own time. And I will be talking after the screening about the structure and about how a filmmaker can extract stories from people in the refugee community. So I will now, sorry.
Shall I share the video?
Yes, yes, please, because I seem not to. Okay. Yes, okay. Please.
Just a moment.
Of course.
ما اصلا از فاصله 100 کیلومتر اینجا دو نفر آدم مثلا 60
چه چیزش واسم سخت بوده؟ سخت نه مثل همین امروز اینجاش خیلی شلوغ پلوغه اینجوری آدم اذیت میشه.
ای بیاره خدا از خورد بیاره.
چه حسی داشتی اون موقع که با خانواده عکس میگرفتی؟ حستون لحظه چی بود؟
خیلی خوب بود.
Πού είναι τώρα η Σαμίρα? Εκεί θα το στήσεις να φαίνεται προς τα έξω.
اونم جالب بود که جارو خاک انداز آوردن گفته اینجا رو تمیز کنیم به خاطر فردا. خیلی خندید.
مردم از اون ببینن.
مشکل در همون قسمتایی که مثلا اول میخواستیم شروع کنیم یکی قسمتاش خیلی سخت بود، مثلا هیچ یاد نداشتیم، تازه میخواستیم یاد بگیریم دیگه، خیلی سخت بود دیگه، کوشش میکردیم که یاد بگیریم.
این پوستر فارسیشه، یکی عربی، کنار این همون جوری اگه بذارید میزنیم پشتش. این همین برای نگه دار. من یکی دیگه هم بزنم پایینش. تلیه
time passes at quite a different pace within the camp. Could we liven up the daily routine of these people who find it difficult to integrate into the Greek society? Could we bring families and unaccompanied minors, men and women together, so as to leave their own prejudices aside for a while?
Shall I move to 5:30 now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
دوست دارم از هر چی، هر اشخاصی باشه، هر جنس باشه، فقط دوست دارم مکس بگیرم، مثلا دربارش تمرینات کنم، تحقیقات کنم، مثلا چیکارش میشه، چیکار نمیشه. یعنی
خاله شما شوهرتون بشینید.
آقا من وسط از اینا بشینم.
نه دختر اون کوچولو بشین وسطش.
مبینا بیا وسط. بیا اینجا. حنان قشنگ ندیدی تو رو
یک دو
برو تا پشت بیا وسط بیا چرا ایده بشین دیگه
عکاسی دوست دارم، علاقه زیادی دارم، بعد به خاطر همینم تو همین چیز شرکت کردم. بعضی بچه‌ام نیومدن دیگه، من اومدم. کم جیس بگیرین خواستید.
اما نکن دست برو دوشونه خاله.
درست شد. من مثلا مادرم عکس گرفتم، خوشحال بودم، هم جلوی دوربین هم پشت دوربین. از اول عکاسی که همیشه یاد گرفتیم تا همین امروز که از اولش خودمون برنامه‌ریزی کردیم که چیکار می‌خوایم کنیم، چیکار دوست نداریم کنیم. اینش خیلی خوب بود، خودمون برنامه‌ریزی کردیم.
Who is giving directions to the family? Ποιος δίνει οδηγίες?
برو تو برو اونجا بگو چی رقم باشه.
Εσύ το έκανες, θα δώσεις εσύ.
اوکی، همراه من گپ نمی‌کنم.
Who is his assistant? θες να είσαι εσύ?
هم با همدیگه بیشتر آشنا شدیم، معرفی میشیم، همدیگه رو میبینیم، خوشحالیم.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will be sharing my screen again. Is it possible?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Okay, so we've had a quick look, a short look on the very beginning and a part from the middle. I'm keeping the whole end as a surprise because the kind of filmmaking changes, and I will welcome you to watch it. I will put the link on the chat, as I said. What is interesting for me is how we organize and place a story in the documentary genre, which is shot in one single day. And this is quite hard and difficult. It resembles more media reportage techniques, but no, the important thing is how to get closer to these people. If we want to make some positive examples and overcome stereotypes, it's important to know your subject very well. Everybody knows this, but it's not so easy to organize and structure the material into a coherent storytelling. And here I would like to show, because this film is part of a bigger educational material we have developed, and it has to do with analyzing and approaching nonfiction work. So we are in the nonfiction area, but there are two different genres in nonfiction. One is a character-driven story, which is the most common. For example, you have one protagonist, and then the difficulties and the life adventures of this one person are driving the story. We have seen many documentaries where one refugee trying to escape or adjusting to a new country. We saw some very nice examples from the EBU series that Milica presented last week. There are hundreds of such great stories, and I think they help very much the cause that we are now talking about. However, there is another genre which is called the essay film, and I think that this work is more into this part of the filmmaking. And this is actually where there is no single protagonist. And this sometimes is tricky, how to manage to organize a dramaturgy with many protagonists. And this was the challenge that I had to face. On the one hand, I knew very well my group, the group of young people that I've been teaching for 3 months. I knew their style, their way of talking. I knew their strong points, their weak points, their confidence. And on the other hand, we wanted to make an event for the whole community. And that was the big challenge. At the same time, there was a double recording. The youngsters were recording the community, were taking pictures of the community, and I was recording the whole event. So this is a double camera situation. As you see, I'm also acting in the documentary film. And at the same time, I am directing my crew, which was a this very small crew, the smallest crew possible in a proper filmmaking, which is the camera person and the sound recordist. So in a way, everybody in that little scene, in the little park, not a park, just 5 trees that are there in the camp, was aware that there was a continuous image making from both sides. But the point is that all the families that we invited and the young people were very devoted and wishing to accomplish this event, because there was an intriguing focal point. The focal point is very simple and very old. A family or friends or relatives are being taken a snapshot. Everybody loves to be taken a nicely taken picture. Everybody is keen to take a pose, whether they're rich or poor, whether they're fragile or not, whether they're fat or slim. Everybody welcomes the very sacred moment of being taken a picture with his beloved ones. And this was the thing we wanted to offer to the community. The chance, although they were in a refugee camp and facing so many issues and everyday problems, the chance to have their picture taken in a professional way. And as you see in the film, as you will see if you watch it, we offered a properly professional printed copy of the picture. It was not digital anymore. It was printed properly, because I believe that we need to have a tactile relationship with things, not only digital and intangible. So as you see in the film, we went, of course, through a long research process and communicating and engaging the community on the event. And the youngsters themselves engaged the community the week before the event. So when we arrived on that day of recording the short film, everything was almost ready. Never everything is ready in documentary, but at least most of the things can be in place. And then you start, improvising. And this is the magic of documentary, that you are improvising based on your plans. And that's where everything can fall into place. So I'm trying to organize the materials in a specific way, because as we all know, whether journalists or media makers or filmmakers, everything then comes into place in the editing. And editing is crucial for our work and for communicating the messages that we want. And the messages I wanted to communicate is how a small community of youngsters communicates and gives respect to a community of refugees inside the camp. And these are the questions we always have to ask and answer if we're making documentary films. And if we arrive at the editing table, that most of you probably have already tried sometimes in your life. So we need to know, how does the film start and how it ends? What happens in the film, how we structure the well-known 3-part thing, beginning, middle, and end. And these are exactly the questions that come again and again in our editing table. How does the audience relate to the story? What are the little elements that you put in the course of the story that help your audience follow and that create and that trigger their attention? In my case, I had to give some information. As you see, I include some little intertitles that give the very basic information about camps in Greece, because I have to be aware that not everybody is aware. We have to respect any kind of audience and remind them things that they already know and bring this information in the film. Also, to engage the audience with some introductory scene. Always the start of a film is very important. If you watch this film in your own YouTube without the lagging of the share screening, you will realize that the first 40 seconds, I say nothing about photography workshop. I say nothing about refugee camp. I say nothing about filmmaking. So it is a sequence that I had imagined from the very first moment, and it's all creating questions. The young people and the families are there preparing something, but you don't know what is happening. And this, I think, is the way that media should also work, by creating questions and triggering the curiosity. After minute one, I start giving the information about where we are, who is there, what is happening, and also I give the atmosphere of the camp. The atmosphere of the camp, as I explicitly say, is a little bit in a different world. It's parallel to everyday life. It's a little bit slower. The rhythm there is kind of out of this space. So there comes the film to ask, can we intervene in these rhythms? Can we create a new situation, a new condition? And then again, last but not least, what is important is not only the images, but also the sounds. In a film, whatever kind of film, the dialogue, the music, the sounds of the location are so crucial to create an atmosphere, especially in a documentary film. We have to think, how do the sounds support the story? So I invite you to watch the film and think about what different kind of sounds are going through. What sounds maybe have been pushed even further to augment some feelings? What sounds have been combined and how with a dialogue? And how does the dialogue with the voiceover connect to each other? In this case, in this short film, I was very interested to have a voiceover which expressed my personal opinion, my personal point of view. And as the film progresses, you will realize that I am not describing what's happening, but I'm talking about my own understanding of what was happening that day and during that workshop. So I will welcome any comments and questions afterwards in the discussion. And before closing, I would like to make a reference on how I work with the groups of vulnerable people, whether they are youngsters or whether they're older, because I often work with young adults or 30, 40-year-old people in those photography and video workshops. And the essence of my work is to organize their point of view. I think when you're in such a difficult situation, it is quite helpful and it builds confidence to organize the way you see the world, because they are in a new country, they are in a new city, they are in new conditions that usually they don't control. So I think camera is an interesting way to make you see in a new way your new environment. And will explain now, just very, very briefly, of course, here, show a few of the methods I use to enhance their confidence to make stories about their own selves. And then these personal stories can, of course, become stories for wider, more professional work. So we work with ready-made cards, and which have an ability to be used as random objects. And different people, these are real outcomes from workshops that run like a year ago or a couple of years ago in the municipality of Athens, the postcards become the vehicle for talking about their present and their future and their past. And it's very versatile and very individual. Also, combining language with images is quite good, because most of the refugees, as we know, are in the process of learning the language of the country they arrive, or learning English as usual as the lingua franca for the whole world. So I've been involved in pilot projects where we combine photography with language, and this material is from there, but we always work language through photography. This is again, for example, another example how the photographic images can be accompanied by speech, and speech can guide photography. And of course, as I say, guiding the
I'm so
yes.
sorry to interrupt. We are really running out of time. So
no problem, no problem. I will close here, it's no problem. I just want to wrap up by saying exactly that guiding and directing the point of view of the vulnerable people helps them trigger stories inside them, and helps us as professionals to enhance these stories and go further. So thank you very much. We can go on in the discussion.
Thank you very much, Maria, for that excellent presentation and for highlighting to us the importance of films in promoting social cohesion, and the importance of understanding the characters and stories in creating these documentaries in order to promote unity. Now, for our next presenter, please welcome Mr. Shafiq Ahmad. Shafiq Ahmad is an award-winning Pakistani media professional based in Ankara, Turkey. He has comprehensive knowledge of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and India's socio-political and cultural environments. At the moment, he serves as an editor of the Asia-Pacific desk for Anadolu Agency. He covered extensively on mass migration issues, and he has visited many refugee camps in order to find out and write on critical issues surrounding migrants, refugees, and also government and donor agencies and their responses in resolving humanitarian issues. Now, please welcome Mr. Shafiq Ahmad for his presentation. Over to you, Shafiq.
Okay. So can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So I have prepared a presentation for this program, and I hope that Mr. Nabil Sahab will coordinate, and he will put some stuff on the screen, so I will be able to easily discuss these points. Yes, thank you very much. So it's a solution-driven media reporting on migration and refugees. Next slide, please. Okay, so migration and refugee crisis reporting. I mean, we must have some different approaches how to deal with these kind of stories, or how to handle these stories. So what should be the approach? The point number one, a stereotypical trend followed by journalists is that they produce too much of victim journalism, where the focus is almost always the trauma and suffering of migration, instead of also attempting to signpost solutions and positive outcome. So the approach of the media persons are usually, they are just showing a lot of things related to like showing the refugees or migrant victim. So we are not focusing on some of the good impact or some other aspect of these migrant and refugees in our stories. So this is one of the approach which definitely should not be encouraged by the media professional. And the other thing is the language. Well-written, powerful, and emotional testimonies from victims are currency for any story. But could there be an alternative positive terminology for victim? Do we know the difference between migrants and refugees? Are we using them correctly or not? Because more often do journalists loosely alternate between them? This is another big issue which I have already mentioned in this small report. Like most of the journalists who are on ground, they are working particularly in Pakistan and in Bangladesh, because they have a lot of refugees in Bangladesh, especially the Rohingyas, who are over 1 million. So what I have seen, like the reporters have a little bit incorrect ideas, and what you people also already discussed, like Ajibola discussed, and I believe in that. But we are using in Anadolu the language irregular migrant instead of illegal migrant, because they are forced to migrate or to leave their country because war is there. So we should choose correct word instead of mixing them up. So empathy actually changes what journalism can actually do. For that, reporters need to listen beyond the stories. I mean, what is my personal experience? Like when we go with particular image in our mind and do the reporting. So we are not that much open to listen to them. What I have seen personally, I have been to like covering the migration myself on ground, going to Afghan refugee camps. At that time, I was quite young, by the way. So a lot of people come to you to tell their story, and we are unwilling to listen to them because we have already made up our mind that we are going to do that story only. So sometime I believe that we should show sympathy and listen to them. This is very, very important. And like I have mentioned my tips, that until and unless you don't listen to them, you cannot get the on-ground and real picture of the story. Like, sometimes what I have seen in the Afghan refugee issues, like UNHCR take a lot of journalists to the refugee camps, or sometimes the government authorities working for the refugees, they take you to the refugee camps. So they provide you the specific information and try to guide you for a specific story. My understanding is now, as a senior one, because now I tell the other people like who are working with us, with this organization, so I tell them to listen to them, because every individual, what Maria said, character-based stories. No, I push the people, those who are on ground, to do character-based stories, because all characters who are forced to migrate to the host country, they have their own stories to tell. So, I mean, as a journalist, and those who are journalists listening to, watching this program, they should know that they should listen to everyone. Like, they shouldn't, focus what the government are trying to tell them, that they should focus on that story, but you should be open-minded, get maximum information from the people, which you can quote in the write-up or in the writing as a newspaper journalist or wire service journalist. And the same is as a filmmaker, like you can have their viewpoint on the issues, and you can better highlight their problems. So next slide, please. Yes, already, Maria and Ajibola have both have explained correctly that, and I will go a little bit more, that there are three types of migration. One is due to war, ethnic cleansing, like war is still going on in Afghanistan, and the ethnic cleansing or the war, like there is a coup, by the way, in Myanmar. Unfortunately, the Rohingya Muslim in Myanmar, they were forced to migrate to Bangladesh and Syria. So this is one type. The next type is the internally displaced people. Like in Pakistan, there were military operations against the militants in the tribal belt bordering Afghanistan. So the people were forced to leave the tribal region and settle in the other district. So these are called the IDPs. And economic migration, what Ajibola has explained correctly, and it has been going on. Historically, we have seen that people are moving to those cities where there is a money, by the way, in simple term, like they go for a better future, better life. So they are moving all the time. It's a history. So these are the three kinds, but I will focus more on the refugees. in my talk, particularly those who are in Bangladesh and those who are in Pakistan. Please, next slide. Okay, challenging the first, when a journalist report or do a story, so the challenges restraining journalists from solution journalism. Like migration reporting highlights the financial, societal and political pressure on newsroom that can contribute to migration coverage, not living up to its potential to go beyond documenting realities and do offer solutions. Like what I earlier explained, like sometime an institution or sometime the government take you to a place and they are actually guide you to do the story or to film something from the angle they want, they wish. So this is one of the challenges because a lot of pressure from the government. It depends on the country, by the way. Some countries are open, they allow free journalism, but in some countries it is difficult to do it. So they guide the journalists that these are the particular issues you should highlight instead of like doing the story of your from your own perspective or with open mind. So the next challenge is maintaining independence in a challenging work environment is another key concern forced by reporters covering solution-oriented reporting. A general decline in the public trust in the news sector globally. This is very important, by the way, to understand, like what Ajibola and Maria was saying. Actually, no, we have a parallel media, by the way. One is the mainstream media, TV channel, newspapers. There is some procedure of filtration. They are getting information and they, through some filtration, provide information to the general public. But they are now facing challenges from the social media because now all the people, they have a smartphone in their hands and they are the journalists because they are, for the first time, actually the people, for the first time, the people have their own viewpoint and they are recording and putting on social media platform. And they, so there is it's a very big challenge. And I tell sometimes to some people, like, look, the future journalism will be divided into two smartphones. Like all the people will be watching and reading news either from the Apple media and the next one maybe the Android media, because it's a big challenge, and people are no more focusing and switching to social media platform for getting more information rather than watching the mainstream media, which is definitely very responsible. Please, can you slide to another one? Okay. Ajibola has already explained. I will not explain all these things, but the one point I want to tell to all the media professionals that when, this is my observation, what I have seen in many countries, and especially in Pakistan, I'm a Pakistani. So what I have seen there, like when there is a crime committed by a local Pakistani, so we just give his name and his district or some details. We focus more on the details of that criminal activities, and then the police action. But you know, what we have seen, like in the case of Afghan refugees, if Afghan do the same type of crime, so we use an Afghan refugee not only in the first paragraph, which is called intro, but also in the headline, Afghan arrested while doing some crime. So I mean, 1.4 million Afghans were leaving. If one incident happens, I mean, it's not a big deal because in society, there is a good people and bad people as well. But one news story actually traumatized the entire migrant or refugee community. So we should avoid these kind of reporting, and it should be based on fact instead of writing about the ethnic background of an individual who has committed the crime, and just with the additional padding of refugees or migrant from that refugee camp he came, like we are using it. So please, next slide. next slide, I want to come to the. Okay, no, please, the final slide. I want that I should give some good information to the people. Like there is a list of a people who migrated from their country of origin, moved to another country, and they actually made the host nation proud of him. One of the example is Einstein. I don't want to give to provide some details because he was a German by German national, and he left the country because of during the Nazi Germany, because he was fearing that he will be his family will be put in the concentration camp. So then he moved to US, and then he is one of the most genius person in the world, by the way. And then Steve Jobs, his father was also a Syrian refugee. And then Zidane, the Algerian footballer, he was captain of France. So I mean, these are the migrants who gave a big name to the country, the host country. Next slide, please. Okay, just I'm giving few tips to all those media professionals who are just focusing on the victimization or the issues the refugees are facing. In fact, we are not highlighting the achievements or what they are doing good in the society where they have taken shelter. I can give you a couple of examples, like when Afghan refugees came to Pakistan, they were very good in rug making, handmade carpets. And they actually transfer that art to the Pakistani community, and then Peshawar and Quetta, these become the hub of exporting handmade rugs to the world, by the way. So still the Pakistanis are producing good rugs, not like Afghan refugees, but still they are producing good rugs. I will not discuss the fashion, but the most important impact of the Afghan refugees is that the Pashto language of the Afghanistan and Pakistan, the writing style was different, the words were different. So all the intellectual of both the countries, they united after the migration of Afghan refugees, and they changed, replaced the other words, the other language words in Pashto, and now they have adopted the correct Pashto words or adopted correct Pashto words for particular things. And they recently, in recent year, the Pashto Academy at Peshawar University published a new dictionary, which is, and the manuscript or the writing script of both the countries now are the same. Like they learned from each other. They corrected the language, by the way. It worked a lot. Both the countries, like Afghan refugees and the Pashtuns living in Quetta and Peshawar, they corrected the dictionary and omitted a lot of words which they had adopted during the course of time from different languages. So this is a big achievement. Like both the Afghanistan Pashtun writers and the Peshawar writers, they are using the same manuscript. I mean, their writing is the same. So I think, I mean, as a reporter, as a journalist, we should also highlight the good impact of these Afghan refugees or these refugees or migrants on the host countries, because the host countries, I mean, in the refugees are mostly unwelcome guests, by the way. They're unwelcome. So as a journalist, we have to highlight what they are contributing to the host countries, and we should do a lot of stories which you can say character-based stories. Thank you very much. This is enough from my side. If there is any question, I will answer, hopefully.
Right. Thank you very much, Shafiq. That was excellent. Thank you for highlighting the aspects of solution-driven journalism, challenges restraining journalists, and some very interesting case studies based on Afghan refugees at the end. We really appreciate it. And now, before we move on to discussions, a kind reminder to participants, please drop your questions in the chat box, so that we can use the next 5 to 10 minutes to discuss and address questions to our esteemed panelists. So if you have questions, please drop it in the chat box below, and I will direct those questions to the panelists today. So I think let's just kickstart our conversation. I think let's talk about moving forward. I think how do we form a more collaborative effort, especially with the media organizations, perhaps those who are interested in arts, filmmakers, at the same time, including the community members, refugees and migrants. How do we form this collaborative platform? Any takers? Shafiq, do you want to go first? You're on mute. You need to unmute first, Shafiq.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I think the civil society organization and the media, they can collaborate with each other because I think that the information flow is too much. There's too much information flow coming from the mainstream media as well as from the social media platform. So now in this situation, when you have a lot of information flow, the civil society organization and media collaboration is very important. The civil society organization, they should provide input, the fact, the on the ground situation to the media persons, because media persons are covering different issues all the time. They are not focusing on only refugees issues. Journalism is a kind of profession. You have daily a news story. You have a daily a new news. So the civil society organization, they should be in touch with the media professional, and they should provide some factual information, because parallel the social media is disseminating a negative and false information, so the mainstream media can correct them. So there is a possibility, and I think there should be a collaboration between the civil society organizations and the media persons.
Right. Okay. I think we have a few questions in the chat box, so let's address that. To Maria, this question is directed to Maria. What was your most memorable experience with refugees in producing the documentary that you just shared? Maria, before you answer, I think few others wants to ask questions as well. So we will take Sabine Aga's question right after Maria's answer. Yeah. Go ahead, Maria. You need to unmute your mic before you answer.
Of course, of course. So thank you for the questions and the reactions in the chat. I thank everybody for the reflections. I think the most memorable thing would be the actual joy and enjoyment of the families that lasted for a long time during that morning, that day, which of course, as you understand, as I said, I knew very well the youngsters I was working with, but the camp is a small village, as everybody knows. We don't know everybody. We were trying to engage them, and we know how much insecurities and versatility and mobility happens with those families. One day they have to go to the bank, another day they have to go to the asylum office, the other day they are sick, the children have problems, the tent or the camp or the container has issues. So we were not sure how many people would get actually attracted that very morning. So it was a challenge. And I think that once we started rolling the photography process, then it started happening, and the enjoyment and the expectation lasted along. So I think that was the memorable thing, the double-sided enjoyment and participation.
Right. Thanks, Maria. Thanks for that insight based on your personal experience. Sabine Aga, do you want to go ahead and ask your question directly to any of the panelists?
She's not in the room at the moment.
Oh, she's not in the room at the moment? Okay. Fine. So if you have any other questions, or you would like to directly ask questions to our panelists, you can go ahead as well. Maybe we can, Ajibola, you can address this question. Based on now for your Journalists International Forum for Migration, you have up to 200 journalists, right, reporting on migration-related issues. Maybe you can share with us one or two success stories from that, or best practices. Ajibola? Okay, I'm not sure if he can hear us.
He is on mute. He's on mute. So you have to.
Ajibullah, you're on mute. So in order to answer that question, you need to unmute yourself. Unmute the microphone before.
Hello?
Yes. Okay, let's address one more question in the chat box. Just give me a minute, Ajibullah. So there's this question in the chat box that asks, how can journalists report what is happening on the ground while the government doesn't want to report what is happening? So I think basically this goes back to a bit of what Shafiq said in the presentation in terms of challenges in terms of migration reporting, especially pressure from the government. So how can we handle this and balance or navigate this in terms of ethical migration reporting? Shafiq, do you want to go first? And then maybe Maria can say a few words and then Ajibullah. Yeah. You need to unmute your mic. Sorry, Shafiq. Okay.
Okay. It's a very easy tip, by the way, to all the journalists. Like, you definitely must have the government version on the story because you have to make the story balanced. So what is my understanding? Like, tilt in the news industry is very easy. It needs a technique how to give angle to the story, how to twist the story. But I personally believe that you must have a version from the government side on any conflictive issue or thorny issue. So you have the voice of the refugees and the migrants, but at the same time, whatever the government say, you have to accommodate the government version. This is important.
Maria, do you want to add on to Shafiq's comment on that? Very quickly, we don't have much time.
Very quickly, even in documentary, we have this issue, how far you can go, the testimonies and things that accuse governmental positions. And it is a matter of keeping a balance, but still not betraying your ideology. This is the problem.
Right. Ajibullah, do you want to add on very quickly? How do we, as migration journalists, overcome the pressure of government pressure?
Every government in the world wants to have factual reporting, want to have first-hand information. There is no pressure on the media to report the truth. If you report the truth to the government, of course, your language must be very, very pleasant, but you must eat the nails on the head. But there is nowhere in the world way. But as a professional, you must be able to balance the story. Because when you report government angle and you don't report the other side, it's not a story as far as we are concerned. Then let me quickly add to this. For journalists, civil society organizations, and community to work together, this is very important for them to note that journalists, we are looking for story, but you must ensure that in what you do, you package training for journalists. That is the only way you can reshape their orientation, expose them to the fact of the issue. So when journalists are not part of what we are doing, for instance, Maria was talking about film production. Film production in what aspect? Film production, how does it affect the psyche of the media? So what I'm saying in essence is that in as much as the film production is very important, we must ensure that we carry the media along. Media is not an island of knowledge. We need to know what is happening. You need to carry us along. From there, we pick our news angle. So we must work together. I must commend the organization for this. We need more and more training for media so that we can get it right.
Okay, thank you very much, Ajibullah. We are running out of time, so I would like to wrap this up. Very interesting discussion. But if participants, if you have any questions, please, you can email us definitely, or you can still drop it in the chat box and we will direct the questions to the panelists and we'll get back to you in the email in the future, yeah? So thank you very much to all the panelists today and participants for your active presentation. Now for closing remarks, please welcome Kendra Reines, Chief of Mission of the International Organization for Migration, IOM Malaysia, to say a few words. Over to you, Kendra.
Okay, great. I was being blocked from unmuting. Great, thank you. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'd like to sincerely thank you all, the participants, the excellent presenters, and especially AIBD for co-organizing this. We're very grateful for everyone's time and collaboration on these issues and for the dialogue over the last few weeks. A few points that I just want to highlight, which are especially meaningful. I really love today how a lot of the focus of the discussion was that migration does benefit all of us. And that's very close to my heart as representing IOM. So I'm really glad this was discussed in a variety of ways. Media is extremely essential at framing the narrative and response to COVID and other issues on migration and migrants and refugees. You as media have such a powerful voice. And so we really hope you use it to address and prevent stigma and speak out against violence and help understand the real situation of migrants. I really like today how we also talked about the power of the photo and the power of the story. And so that's not to be dismissed as an accurate form of storytelling and conveying the truth. So we know this is not an easy task, but we're so grateful for all of the media practitioners, for all of your hard work on these issues. And IOM is committed to an inclusive post-COVID recovery that addresses the needs of all populations, including migrants. And so we're very grateful for the media for helping to speak about this inclusiveness so that we can all have a better society together and all overcome COVID's health and economic impact. So thank you all for your time and commitment over these few days, as well as always. So I wish everyone health, safety, and continued well-being. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Kendra. Now, please welcome representative from AIBD, Ms. Lee Lai Mei, to say a few closing remarks. Over to you.
Hello, can you hear me? Right. Good afternoon, Ms. Kendra, Chief of Mission International Organization for Migration, IOM Malaysia. Good afternoon, dear participants and speakers from different countries. On behalf of the Director, Ms. Philomena, we extend her apologies that she can't be with us today for the closing as she's engaged outside KL with other commitments. All right. As AIBD, as you know, is honored. We are honored, very honored to partner with UN agency like the IOM and WHO to organize this regional webinar, the second series after the success of the first webinar last year on migrants and refugee-related issues. I hope all the participants have gained good knowledge from our international speakers in dealing with migrants and refugees from the 3 weeks webinar on the media matters, dispelling disinformation about migrants and refugees. As you all know, as an international intergovernmental organization, AIBD is mandated to provide capacity building to media practitioners to enhance their professionalism in discharging their daily tasks. Migrants and refugees are sensitive issues for many countries, for any countries, for all you say. Hence, it is the ultimate role of the media practitioner to safeguard the well-being of these vulnerable groups through their fair and balanced reporting. Media practitioners should be mindful of the negative expression that can create or increase social stigma and need to focus on inclusive language. With that, I wish to thank again our partners, IOM and WHO, for the continued collaboration in the near future. To our participants and the media practitioner who have passionately followed our 3 weeks webinar, be transformed, go and tell your balanced stories, uphold humanity for this vulnerable group, the most unwelcome guests in most countries. With this, I officially close this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for reminding all media practitioners to uphold dignity and also promote cohesion. Now, before we leave and we end the session, let's take a group photo, everyone. So please switch your cameras on so that we can take a group photo with all the participants and speakers. Are we ready?
Yeah, Mr. Shafiq has came back.
Yes. Okay, let's take a group photo with everyone.
So guys, can we just turn on our cameras? So we have 2 pages. And now I'll be taking the picture. All right, so 1, 2, 3. Just a moment. Just a moment. Miss Cheryl Lee is here now, so I'll just do it again. So 1, 2, 3. All right, just a moment. So we have another page. Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Nabil. Just a kind reminder, we will be sending you our post-webinar questionnaire later on after this session. So we are very eager to hear your feedback. So please fill up those post questionnaires. And the time is now to strengthen the immunities of our societies against the virus of hate. And we truly hope that media and communication practitioners will actively address issues such as xenophobia, stigma, and hate surrounding or addressed towards the vulnerable populations, especially migrants and refugees. Thank you so much, everyone. It's truly been a pleasure learning from all of you for the past 3 weeks. So thank you so much, and hopefully to see everyone in the future. Goodbye, and have a great day.